Hearing a lot of buzz about Holybro's new Copsis 1 FPV quadcopter and want to know, is this one of the best bind and flies you can buy? Well, stay tuned because that's exactly what we're going to find out. G'day, Stu here from UAV Futures, and today, well, we're going to be looking at Holybro's Copsis 1, and I've really got to give it to Holybro because a long time ago I did a sponsored review where they paid me some dollars, and that was, I think, for the Holybro Shuriken 180 Pro. You can leave that video up here. But that review didn't go very well whatsoever. They sent me a very unkind email afterwards, and I never actually thought I was going to get another Holybro product again. But here we are today, and we're checking out the Holybro Copsis 1, and I gotta say, on first glances, this thing really looks like they've upped their game from that last time when I reviewed something of theirs, because this thing looks pretty fantastic. Now, I've been hearing some great claims about this thing. A lot of people are talking up its praises, so that's exactly what we're going to be doing in this video. We're going to be finding out, is this thing as good as everybody's making it out to be? So we're going to be sticking it on the bench, breaking it down, having a look at its pros and cons, having a look at all its components, and then in a part 2 video, we'll take it out to the field, rip it around, hit it with speed gun Sally, see just how fast we can get it, and also hand it over to Grumpy Trev. Anyway, enough rambling from me. I'm pretty excited, so let's stick it on the bench and get started. Alrighty, so here it is on the bench, the Holybro Copsis 1, and look, it could just be me, but is there something weird going on here between the drone manufacturers and making pink quads? Because we've got this one, there's a touch of pink on here. I just reviewed the Fury Bee X215, which had some pinky purpley motors as well. And then just the other day, we did the part 1 review of the Awesome F200. Well, that's the brand of it, Awesome F200. And that was sort of pink as well. So, pretty interesting. Anyway, enough rambling. Let's talk a little bit more because there's a lot of hype and a lot of people are talking about this as a fantastic quad, so that's exactly what we're here to do today. We're going to find out, is this going to be the right quad for you? So as a bit of an overview, look, it's a 5-inch racer, and I think this one's aimed at people who just want to get into the hobby. They want a drone that works straight off the bat very, very easily. Straight off it flies, you get a very nice flight experience. So traditionally, look, Holybro does make some really cool stuff. They do make some rubbish as well, you know, and if you watch that review of the 180 Pro, I really wasn't a fan of that, but the X1, you know, that was a fantastic quad. That was great to fly, and one thing I do have to say about all their quads, they're so easy to get set up and get flying. Like, you plug them in, you bind them really easy, and within 10 minutes from the box to the air, that's how long it takes, and you're ready to rock and roll. Now, I do note every single time I review one of Holybro's quads, I always tell them, please don't ship it with the props on, because these things are so easy to get flying, it's a little bit unsafe. So I would love it if they could just take it off, because you know, if you're getting one of these, chances are you're a brand new pilot and you might not know, but you know these things can be dangerous. But I have seen some accidents happen where people get cut up by the props. So if you're listening, Holybro, for next time, please ship it with the props off. I know you haven't listened in the past when I've mentioned that, but it'd be cool if it just came with the props off to the side. Now, what this is a 5-inch racer aimed at those beginners or people who just want a fantastic quad that's going to fly really well. It's a unibody design, so which that means it's made out of one solid piece of carbon, and we'll be going through the components and its quality and the pros and cons and all those things like that in a moment. But what we should do, let's stick it on the bench, on the scales. So take your bets. Look, in the instructions it says it's around 300 grams. I'm getting 312 grams, so a little bit of discrepancy there. But regardless, it's still a fantastic weight because that's very, very light for a 5-inch racer, especially like a bind and fly, and one that looks as solid as this. Yes, it's not like some of those ultralights or anything like that, but still a pretty good weight. And I think the reason that's so good is because these motors, they're not the biggest motors they've got on here. So they've got an interesting choice of motor, interesting color too. I do think it looks pretty awesome. But if these motors were heavier and bigger, that I think is where the extra weight would come in versus some of those other quads out there. So what we should do, let's have a bit of a look at the components. We're going to break it down, take it apart. We'll start at the outside in and then sort of work our way towards the middle. But the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take off these props because they do make it very difficult to try to do my reviews. We do have some lock nuts on here as well, which is fantastic because are much better than that other style. I really like lock nuts. It's sort of what I like to use on all my motors. Now with the props off, I guess we can quickly mention they are some 50-45 bullnose props, tri-blades. I think they're going to work really well with these motors. Look, not my favorite prop at all. They do remind me sort of the original Dal V2s or whatever they were back in the day, but I think I'm going to put some Cyclones on here. After we fly it around, I will fly it around with these, but you also get a spare pair of these. But props aren't really a big issue because you can change them out. A lot of pilots just put on their preferred props anyway. So we're going to put these to the side. Alrighty, now flipping it over, we can actually start to look at some of the components. And the first part, I guess, the biggest component, or let's talk about the frame. So it's 220 millimeters from motor to motor diagonally. You can see it's in this sort of stretched X shape, which means, you know, it's closer towards the front. It's longer in this axis. And I really like that when it's flying around because because what that's going to allow you to do, it gets more cleaner air into the props, into the back props anyway, in fast forward flight. And I also think it adds a bit of physical expo, because if you, let's say you go up by 3 degrees on a longer quad, that 3 degrees or that up tilt on the throttle, it's going to make it feel a little bit less. So I like to think of it as a bit of physical expo. That's the best way I can explain it anyway when we're flying around. But, you know, look, it doesn't have separate arms. It is made up of one solid piece of carbon. That carbon there, it is 5mm, and the one part I found interesting, it feels fantastic, it looks really nice, you know, very, very clean cut, it's chamfered around the edges, but I do feel like there's a little bit of flex. So I don't know if it's just me or maybe it's just that front arm, but the front arms, oh no, it could be this one as well. That feels like there's a little bit of flex in this frame, which is quite interesting. Not quite as much as something like the cheaper F200. I thought this one had tons of flex. This one had heaps of flex. But, you know, I guess if we compare it to something like this is the Fury Bee. This one actually has less flex. This drone's about half the price. So interesting there. I don't know if it's got something to do that it's one solid base plate, because there is a little bit of flex coming in right there. Now, I don't know if this is causing it. Look, it could be this bolt right here. I don't know if that's in a real stress part of the arm, if it's going to break. I am worried a little bit, but I think that's sort of compensated by the fact that on the outside, you don't have ridiculously heavy motors anyway. So because the motors aren't super heavy, that means it's going to hold up pretty well in crashes. Look, it is 5mm, and time will tell. I haven't broken an arm for quite some time, so you'd have to be unlucky, but I am surprised for 5mm. It had more flex than I was sort of expecting. Now on the outside, we have T-Motor motors. So these are the Air 40s, 2205, 2450 kV motors. I think that's a pretty good size for this motor. T-Motor, I must say, makes some exceptional motors. They do look really awesome. I love the bit of a bling pink color. I think they look fantastic. But, you know, look, they're not the most power-hungry motor or anything like that, but I think it's going to result in a very smooth flight experience, and they're going to be perfect for spinning these sort of props. I don't think this is designed to be a flat-out crazy insanity racer. I think this is just going to be a good everyday flyer. Still with plenty of speed, far more than most pilots can handle, probably more than I can handle, but yeah, I think these motors are going to be fine on this little bad boy. Now moving towards the inside, this is where things start to get really interesting. So you can see what I'm probably going to do. I'm going to take the top off in a minute, but the first part I want to point out why it's on here. We've got an FPV camera now. Trust Holybro, they've put some really good stuff in here. So look, this isn't your cheap everyday racer. There's some really quality components in here, and I think that's great to offer people that sort of market. So at the front, our FPV camera, it's the Runcam Swift 2. Runcam make, in my opinion, the best FPV camera, so it's great to see it in here. You can adjust the angle. It's got some little adjustments on the side here if you want to slide it in and out. It looks like this whole frame's been built around this camera, but the one part, I don't know why this is happening, is if this is going to fly, there's no camera protection whatsoever, so you're going to smash your lens or something like that. Even on an upside down landing or anything like that, you're sort of resting on the camera. So that part, I think, is a little bit disappointing because it's such a well-designed quad, but that's probably its biggest flaw that I can see straight off the bat. If you're going to fly around, if you're going to hit a gate, flags or anything like that, you know, you can come in and that's goodbye to your camera, which absolutely sucks because these are beautiful cameras, and it's a bit of a shame that that doesn't have some extra camera protection or something like that. I don't know how else you could do it though, unless they had a little bar that went across the front, that might protect it. But yeah, overall I think it's a little bit strange that they've put so much design into the frame but left that part out the front. Now look, that's not just Holybro who does that. I should mention people like Diatone's GT2, those sorts of quads. There's a lot of quads out there nowadays that don't protect the cameras, and it's something I wish the manufacturers would change because that's the last thing we want to smash. And to be honest, that's probably the Copsis one. That's probably its biggest competitor. That would be the Diatone GT2. So I've got my version. That's it right here because these are around the same price. As you can see, I've used this one quite a bit, and I've had a bit of a crash with it recently, but you can see this one's camera is sticking right out the front as well. Now flipping over, look, actually before I take the top off, I do want to mention this because we've got some ESCs underneath, and that's very different for quads nowadays. Not many quads put them on the underneath side, and that is pretty cool because sometimes if you're flying around and you know your prop gets deflected or bounces off something, you can cut your ESCs, but they're underneath here, so that's not going to happen. That's not going to be causing any issues. You're not going to be getting any prop strikes on your ESCs. It does mean you need to route your wires around. It doesn't look quite as clean in my opinion if it was running straight across the arms. Is that a better idea than just putting a little plastic cover on there? I'm not too sure. It's been a long time since I've ripped open an ESC due to a prop strike, but But, you know, I think it's pretty cool they're underneath. Now, speaking of the ESCs, this is one of the best parts of this quad. I really like the ESCs they've got in here. So they're not even BioHeli S, they're BioHeli 32. So they're 30 amp BioHeli 32 ESCs, which is like the next current, like ultra new generation of ESCs. So really, really cool. And to be honest, I've never flown 32-bit. That's how new they are. I can't wait to rip it around and try these ESCs because I think they're going to be fantastic. Alrighty, so let's get into the guts. Let's have a look at it. So let's take off this top part right here and have a look at what's inside. All these screws are countersunk as well. So look, I don't know if that's going to affect the strength. I would have to say it does a little bit. Don't know, there's some metal shavings in there, but it does result in a very clean looking build, and especially if you're going to mount something to the top like our GoPro. We'll also talk about the GoPro mount as well. Anyway, let's take the lid off the Copsis one. So you can see, you know, it comes bind and fly, so it's got a receiver in there. So I'm just going to put this bit to the side. So at the front you can see we've got our little FPV camera like we mentioned before, and then there's really only two things. So we've got the F4 Holybro flight controller, and I know that had some work with Joshua Barbour. Joshua Barbour actually wrote a fantastic manual for this, so I'll leave that in the description down below. Definitely go and check that out if you've got one of these, because he put a lot of work into that manual. The Holybro F4 flight controller, and interesting enough, this is also the same flight controller that was in the Fury Bee, like I mentioned before. So kind of interesting that we've got both of those in here. But this one, this is the all-in-one. So this all-in-one, you know, it's got everything. It's got our PDB and all that sort of stuff. So you can simply connect up your XT60, like you can see here, ready to rock and roll. Now it does have a little floating gyro, which means it's sort of soft mounted already. So you shouldn't be getting any isolations. No need to soft mount or anything like that. Anyway, and then on the top, we've got right here, this is our VTX, and I love the fact that it screws down onto the stack, makes a really nice clean little build, and I think you guys can agree that the Copsis definitely does look like it's got everything nice and compact and put in. But this VTX is special for a couple of reasons, and actually kind of interesting. It's got some pros and some cons. So I love this connector that they're using there. So I love how it's not an SMA and it's not a UFL connector or anything like that. This is a really high quality connector, and it runs off the pigtail towards the back, and we will talk about this where it joins at the back as well on the SMA connector. And then the other interesting part, you can actually change your VTX channel from your radio. So you put your goggles on, this thing will put it on the screen, it will show you exactly what the camera's seeing, like a bit of an OSD overlay. You can twiddle your thumbs and change your VTX channel. I absolutely love that feature, but I don't like it that there's not really another option, so you can't change the option traditionally like some of the more old school VTXs that'll just say channel 1 band A or something like that. So look, I like that you can change it through your radio, but I kind of do miss pressing a button. I wish that was just a little inclusion, even just off to the side. Maybe that's just me, maybe I'm just a little bit old school. Now on the back it's great, you've got some programmable LEDs hooked up to a buzzer, and then underneath that, I don't know how you guys will be able to see this, I'll flash a picture on the screen anyway, but you can see you've got this little part. This is where your FPV antenna connects. So, and that's actually on a downward sloping angle, so that's pretty cool that that part's going to stay out of the props when you're flying around. Alright, so with the components out of the way, I mean everything in here is top notch. The motors are beautiful, the camera's fantastic. I love what you can actually do with the VTX, even though, you know, there are some things I'd like to change in here, and it comes with a good receiver, fantastic antenna, and a fantastic little F4 flight controller in there as well. And look, the frame, even though it is a little bit flexy, the design I think is pretty good. A really good center of gravity as well, which means it should be really nimble when you're taking it out and ripping it around. But yeah, I think overall this is a much improved design. They did a great job with the X1, and it's great to see Holybro still out there making some really cool stuff. You know, their flight controllers, everything in here is top notch. The question is this worth the price tag though? So the $300, because it's a bit of a strange market. Now as far as the pros and cons go, really, look, they've got there's no real cons about the components. Other than that part of the VTX, the components on here, absolutely top notch. I'm not sure about the flex in the frame for a 5mm frame. I'm not sure why mine's doing that, but the only real part I'd want to change is this part here at the front. Is your FPV camera is very susceptible to a crash or hitting a tree. This thing is going to be absolutely gone, which sucks, because to be honest, that's such a good camera and you don't want to wreck something like that, because that's one of the stars of the show. Now the interesting part for me is the $300 price tag. It's, you know, is it worth it? I would say yep, but you're running into some stiff competition. You've got the GT2 up there, or also you're getting a little bit closer to some of the like Bind and Fly Chameleons or the really top tiers. $300 is a fair bit of money. I'm not saying this thing isn't worth it, but when you can get something, I guess, like the Fury Bee for like half the price, it's kind of a bit of a premium that you're paying. Now, Holybro, fantastic manual. I like some of the extras that you get. Like you get like a carry case, some bonus props, a whole bunch of little things, I guess, like some spare Velcro straps and all that sort of jazz. So look, you know, I guess Is it worth it? That's kind of up to you for $300 because it's a really tough market that they're going after. It's fantastic, it's a great quad, but it's also a little bit more on the pricey side. Alrighty, so there it is. There's my part 1 review of the Holybro Copus, Copsa, whatever you want to call it. I'll link it down below anyway. My part 1 review of this bad boy from Holybro, and I think they've really come a long way from when I reviewed their last product to this product. It was chalk and cheese. The last one was rubbish when they weren't very happy with me, but this bad boy, I definitely think this is a serious racer. Now, is it perfect? No, I think the FPV camera, the protection you're going to get right there, the camera's great, but the protection, like I mentioned, is a bit of an issue. And the VTX, it has some pros. I love how you can change it through the Betaflight OSD. Fantastic, but I still do wish there was the option to change it otherwise. Look, there is a button, you can change it manually, but it's very, very tedious and definitely not a nice, straightforward process like we're used to on most of our other racing drones. Now, for $300, this thing is facing some stiff competition, not from, like, there's things like the GT2 and stuff, but $300 is a fair chunk of money, and I think when you consider, you can get something like the Fury B 215 or something like that. I'll leave my part 1 review up here. You know, that's like half the price. So is it the pros and cons? You got to weigh it up, and then you're also getting towards the other end. If you're spending $300, maybe you could get like a Bind and Flying Chameleon for a little bit more. So look, I think it's going to be a really tough market, but it definitely does have a good market. It's got top-notch components, it's well designed, and I think out of the box, if you just want something that's going to work, this is going to be a great FPV racer. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. Enough rambling from me. Definitely stick around, because in part 2, we'll take it out to the field, we'll hit it with Speed Gun Sally, I'll show you some HD footage, we'll hand it over to Grumpy Trev and see what he thinks about it, and yeah, we should have a good time. Anyway, subscribe for more FPV related content, drop some comments down below. What do you think about the Copus Coat, whatever you want to call it? What do you think about this quad? And as always, happy flying! Alrighty, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Definitely subscribe if you're new to the channel and check out these videos. And I'm also going to leave a little link here to my Patreon page, because I've got some fantastic Patreon supporters and I like to give back to them as well. So if you want to join the UAV Futures family, there's things like bonus Velcro straps, little bundles of FPV goodies and things like that that also get sent out. Anyway, happy flying!